Hi there, it's Llarold, and today I'm going to talk about how to succeed at Dragonriding Racing. We made a video right around the time the expansion launched about the basics of how to dragon ride successfully, just sort of around the world, and how to stay in the air forever. And, you know, if that's information you feel like you could use still, check that out. But I think generally speaking, the expansion has been out for well over 6 months now. Most people probably have a decent handle on at least how to stay aloft. Instead, what I mostly want to focus on is the skills that really help you with the racing aspect of the dragon riding races. Because it's one thing to fly around the world fairly quickly, it's another to manage to zigzag back and forth through all the gates within that time frame without losing speed or running into the various obstacles in the way, or just frankly hitting the ground, which I did quite a lot throughout the process of getting all golds on all the different difficulties. So now let's just start with kind of the basics of the races. First of all, there are a group of races for each zone. There are 6 zones in this expansion thus far, when you include the 4 original zones, the Forbidden Reach, and the Llarold Cavern. With the exception of the Waking Shore, which has like 9 races or so, most of the zones have somewhere between 5, 6, 7 races each. There are 3 categories of race for each designated race spot as well. There are just the basic races, which usually have like sort of jump jets or thrusters scattered around throughout them to help you get through all the gates on time, and generally speaking, these race timers are tuned to be fairly forgiving. Then there are the advanced races, which are quite a bit more difficult to get those silver and gold times on, and instead of having thrusters or the boost jets throughout the races, for the most part, they will have little green swirlies scattered throughout the race course that you can pick up just by flying through them to regain an extra point of vigor. That is, other than the timings being quite a bit more difficult on advanced and there being more obstacles to deal with, that is sort of the main difference between the normal and advanced races. The normal races, for my money, feel a lot more difficult to do because you have a lot less vigor to work with on average. You just have to sort of navigate through all the little boosters most of the time. But the timings on the normal races are so much more forgiving that they usually are a lot easier to get gold on, and the advanced ones do feel quite a bit more difficult. And finally, there are the reverse races, which I think were added in patch 10.0.5, and the way those function is pretty simple. You basically do the advanced course backwards. So in some cases, it's actually quite a bit more difficult because there are some very strange turns that you might have to make, or just some really weird pathing back and forth. Sometimes you might have to start off a race that previously had ended with a huge downward shoot toward the end gate. Instead, you have to start off now by like taking off and launching up into the air for 10 whole seconds. It can be a little weird. That being said, sometimes the reverse races are a lot easier than the original advanced race for the exact opposite reason. What was a very difficult turn might become very easy instead. Now, in terms of the reasons why you would bother with any of this, for me, just first off, I found them to be fun, so that's a good enough justification just on its own. They're fun. But if fun's not enough for you, or maybe you don't find them fun, there are a ton of achievement points associated with completing all of these achievements. So if that revs your motor, then there you go. Doesn't really do anything for me, but what does do something for me are the actual tangible rewards that are associated with some of these achievements. For completing the Silver Dragon Isles Racer, you get a pet, a bronze dragon racing enthusiast, a little bronze dragon with a checkered flag in her mouth, and I think she's pretty cute. She also has a lot of beast abilities, which isn't a totally unique concept for a dragon battle pet, but she has like a lot of them, so it is something that stands out as being pretty good. Also, she's, again, just very cute. Nice little pet. There's also a title associated with each of the 4 gold level meta achievements. So one for doing all of the Dragon Isles races as a gold time, one for doing them all in reverse, one for doing all of the Forbidden Reach races, and finally one for doing all of the Zarelek Caverns races. I really like the Reverse Racer title, so that was kind of what motivated me to do all of this in the first place, and I'm really happy to have it. I like all of them, but that one particularly stands out. It's just very funny to me. Something that I found particularly interesting in doing all of this is that the advanced races don't give you credit for the lesser races. You know, you get that a lot with achievements where you'll do, say, a mythic dungeon for the first time. It's also the first time you've ever cleared the dungeon on that character at all, and you'll get the original dungeon achievement and the heroic dungeon achievement and the mythic dungeon achievement all at once. That wasn't happening with the normal race and advanced race credit. I had to do each of those separately. Now, by my understanding from reading just on Wowhead, the way that you're able to unlock the advanced races is by doing all of the normal races first. However, I don't know if maybe there was some sort of account-wide shenanigans going on there or something, but I had advanced races unlocked on all my characters, and yet logging onto my monk, I hadn't even finished the very first Waking Shores Tour quest, which is just simply a quest that sends you to go do all of the races in the Waking Shore, and then you get followed up with the Onaran Plains tour, where you do all the Onaran Plains races and so on. You have to finish all 4 of those quests, allegedly, in order to unlock advanced races. I know I never did any of those quests on any characters, and I had all the advanced races unlocked. Don't know how. I did find that I was not able to do reverse races until I had finished all 4 of those quests, though. So it was a bit of a weird thing where I had gone around and done all the races on my monk on advanced, gotten the achievements for all of it, and then realized I didn't have the normal achievements, and I had to go back around and do all of them again to get that credit a second time. So if for some reason you find yourself in that sort of a situation, go ahead and kind of make sure that you've gotten each of the races done at the gold level, if that's what you're going for, on every difficulty before you leave and then have to backtrack and do everything multiple times like I did. I suffered so you don't have to, but not really, because again, it was fun. Now, something I had read in some comment sections and was worried about was that the rewards for this weren't account-wide, and maybe that was the case at the very start of the expansion, but the titles, the Dragonriding transmogs, the pet, all of that stuff is account-wide. Progress for them wasn't, like I couldn't do half the races in Thaltrasis on my paladin and do the other half on my monk. You do have to do all of the races for a zone on a single character, but that's how achievements work in this game, so that wasn't really anything too unexpected for me. But just the idea that, like, I earned Reverse Racer on my monk, I can log onto my warrior who hasn't done any of the races on reverse and put on the title Reverse Racer, that is working just fine. Alright, so I've talked a lot about the what and the why, but I haven't really talked about the how. So let's just kind of go into the basics of dragon riding really quickly, and that really comes down to 2 main skills. Skyward Ascent is basically the only skill I ever use when I'm just dragon riding around the world, which, you know, I might as well go ahead and start doing that now. You hit space or whatever you have it keybound to, it launches you up in the air, but if you tilt your camera back down shortly after you've launched up with Skyward Ascent, you can get a lot of forward momentum out of it. Actually, a substantial amount more forward momentum than you would out of Surge Forward. Ironic. Now, the key to using Skyward Ascent correctly, of course, is to never be, like, even with the ground or facing down when you hit it. If you do, you're gonna basically just completely break. You want to always be pointing up when you press that spacebar, when you press that Skyward Ascent keybind, but then you have about 2 seconds to level back out before you lose all the momentum that you've generated, but you can basically snap back down immediately, and as you can see, it turns into a lot of speed. This is really good for the races that are in the Waking Shores, and there are a handful in each zone where you have big, wide open spaces where you can kind of generate a lot of speed, and you have a lot of space in between the gates. Where it's not so great is when you have gates that are right all up on top of each other, or there's a lot of zigzagging back and forth, because if you're trying to skyward ascent and turn up and down and also move side to side, you know, you might wind up missing the gate, and yeah, that's not great. That's a pretty easy way to fail a race. And so for those situations, that is where I like to use Surge Forward. It's not nearly as good for your overall speed. You know, I hit it, and we have the speed indicator on this awesome weak aura here that I will put in the pinned comment. But you can see I'm getting nowhere close to the same level of speed from a Surge Forward as I am from a well-oriented, well-managed skyward ascent. But the difference is, of course, that skyward ascent takes a lot more control. You have to tilt up and then tilt back down to really maximize that speed. Whereas Surge Forward, you know, if I'm turning left and right and whatever, I can just hit Surge Forward while I'm turning side to side. I'm not worrying about having to also tilt up and then tilt back down really quickly, and not worried about running into a tree branch that's above me in a difficult race or hitting the ground. So I'll just do a race here, and I'll just go to the very first race I run into, and we'll just kind of see how it goes. Maybe I'll play around with a couple of these just to see if I can find somewhere where they really force you to use Surge Forward a lot. Now that's something right there, right off the bat. The decision of whether you want to skyward ascent or Surge Forward when you leave the landing platform. If it's a race where you're lucky enough to be going straight up at the start, you can always skyward ascent. That's really good for building up a lot of momentum. But a lot of the time, the races force you to start out by dropping directly down. And in those cases, hitting skyward ascent, you're basically like just stalling out by then having to immediately go straight down. You're usually better off just walking off the platform or jumping and then immediately surging downward, but forward straight down. Excellent. I love this. Oh yeah, I love this race. Quite good. Love being able to skyward ascent a whole bunch in a row. And you can see I'm way over my energy cap here, vigor cap. I don't know if I golded that. Oh, I did. Felt like I shouldn't have. I had a lot of unused vigor there, but yeah, nice. Now, I didn't really mention Whirling Surge, and that's because it's pretty bad. It's generally not a useful skill. I can't say I ever use it while I'm flying around. The only time I could ever really think about using it is maybe like I'm flying toward Escara and I see Soup is getting close to ending and I want to get there, you know, 2 seconds earlier to do it faster, or Rare's about to die, I want to get there 2 seconds earlier. The only time I ever really use it in racing is if I have like 5 or 6 energy and the race is fairly close to ending. Maybe I'll hit Whirling Surge instead of Surge Forward. Generally, you just don't want to play yourself into that kind of a situation, though. It's really not that useful. Alright, I know there is one particularly difficult race over here in southwestern Anaran Plains that I kind of want to make my way over toward to demonstrate like a lot more how useful Surge Forward can be in a lot of the tighter corridors. I'm probably going to fail this race a couple of times. The River Run, if I remember the name correctly, because it's pretty hard. Not my favorite. At least not when I was struggling to get a gold time. Kind of fun in retrospect, though. Here we go. River Rapids Route. Again, we're starting off by dropping down, so I kind of just want to go into this by surging forward. And then immediately failing. Excellent. This is a little bit of a tricky spot, so you want to surge forward like immediately here and then try to skyward ascent as quickly as you can, but there is like a small internal cooldown between the two. Getting those skyward ascents to really give you a lot of like forward momentum by immediately snapping your camera back down after you've hit them so that you're not just launching up in the air and missing your gate is really important on a race like this. But yeah, see, I just lost a bunch of momentum by screwing up a skyward ascent because I wasn't facing up enough because I didn't want to miss my gate. Surge forward, definitely a safer, better choice for most of this race. I feel like I'm probably not going to gold this one. All right, I got pretty lucky. Now let's try that one out again. And instead of trying to skyward ascent through the middle half of the race, I'm just going to try and focus more on surging forward throughout the whole thing. Still want a skyward ascent here to get a good head of steam going early on. But then as soon as we get into the middle of this race, I'm just going to switch straight to surging forward. And just focus on navigating through all the gates. Now, right here, I feel like I'm safe to skyward ascent since I am traveling upward. But yeah, just straight surge forward the whole time. Way easier. Definitely feel like I'm not fighting as much with my camera and with my mount. And hey, what do you know? Several seconds faster as a result. Yeah, that felt pretty good. It certainly felt a lot easier, a lot less painful. And then also was, whatever, 2.5 seconds faster. That's, or 1.5 seconds faster. That's not bad. Man, I love dragon riding. It's not really a guide, it's just me saying how cool it is. Alright, I'll close with this last little pro tip here. This hasn't really been all that helpful for me personally, because I don't think I've failed any of the dragon riding races that I failed on because I couldn't see. I failed them because I screwed up and played badly. But a lot of people have said that they really like to be put into combat when they're trying to do a guide video. Don't know why they're saying that. A lot of people have said that they really like the Cliffside Wilder Drake, maybe it's Wilder Drake, or the Windborne Velocidrake, because they are quite a bit smaller than the Highland Drake, you know, which is this big boy here. And he does block your camera. Or definitely the Winding Slither Drake. He's pretty long. He's definitely going to block your camera really, really effectively. So the Cliffside Wilder Drake in particular is really, really teeny tiny. It's real small. Makes it, you know, just a little bit easier if you feel like you're struggling at all with any of these races. Maybe you swap to him. I really didn't like this guy at all initially. I don't know, by default he looks like a bald man, but using some of the head ornamentation that I unlocked by doing all these races, I was able to change him around and make him look, I think, pretty cool. Now I'm a big fan. He's a cool guy. Alright, I think that's it. Thanks for watching. I hope this helps you with dragon riding racing. There need to be more reverse racers out there, just like me. Thanks for watching. Have fun. Bye.